Scyushi squad, assemble, for we are back again for some more Trove. Finally, the 35K series continues, and I kind of baited a lot of you guys. If you ended up checking out like some more recent videos, you guys keep asking, what's going to be the next character? What's going to be the next character? And a lot of you kept talking about Dino Tamer. I lazily am going to be using the Gunslinger today instead, because Gunslinger is an absolute powerhouse, and I'm curious to see how it handles, well, I guess just U10. I mean, we already know how it's going to handle delves. The thing is that I technically, like, this is my C4 gun, and as you can see, the second stat on it is crit damage, meaning that fourth attack for Gunslinger is going to be attack speed. But if I want to use it on Dino Tamer, I'm going to have to re-roll that stat into being movement speed. I might consider doing that right now. It does mean that our damage is going to be a little bit lower than... I mean, our damage is going to be low anyways, because I have movement speed on this gear instead of attack speed. And then second stat on my hat is actually movement speed as well, because this is actually my C4 hat and face that are from my Tomb Raiser, because I had to swap all of my magic gear over to my Tomb Raiser, right? Before we get into actually just playing with the character and stuff, though, I gotta let you guys know, if you're new to Trove, you can use that sign-up link down in the description, and then anything you end up buying out of the cash shop, I'll make a percentage of that sale. It's an awesome way you can support me by literally just playing the game and buying things you would otherwise buy. But I do have some other stuff cooking in the background. I'm gonna kind of overhaul my merch store, and I got some special perks that are coming for members and stuff. It doesn't matter, we'll talk about that in another time. So you can pretty much see the build that I'm using on my Gunslinger in I have a more recent class tutorial video for the Gunslinger, and I'm literally just using the same build that I would use there, because I ended up actually swapping all of my Tomb Raiser gems over. If this is your first time tuning into the 35K series, what we're basically going to do is I'm going to set up a timer here, and then we're going to end up hopping into U10, and then we're going to spend 5 minutes in there, and then we're going to spend another 5 minutes, well, a floor, let's say, in delves, which is going to be considerably a deep level. So normally I would be using the Lunar Lancer subclass ability, but we're actually going to swap to the Knight subclass ability just for the sake of having the extra mount movement speed while we're actually grinding dungeons. I'm also going to swap over to Gonda, which works very, very well with this look. It's absolutely beautiful. And oh my god, I rarely get to use other wings on characters, but look at Wings of Wizardry, dude. Look at that. Oh my god, those look so good, especially with this costume, dude. This is my favorite Gunslinger costume. It's beautiful. So anyways, yeah, let's I have everything else right here, so you can always check that out, but let's just go to U10. The thing is, it's very expensive for me to do these videos because I have to spend a lot of qubits on regeminators, so that's why I gotta make sure that everything's already all set up. All right, and go. We are off. All right, where is going to end up being the first dungeon? Now, Gunslinger, as far as damage is concerned, we're gonna be fine. We should be able to defeat these dungeon bosses no problem, even without using our ultimate ability. I'm assuming. It's been a hot second. Oh yeah, we're fine. I can't believe Gunslinger is that powerful even without charge shots. Like, holy crap. So this character is actually viable. Like, I always thought Gunslinger was just used for endgame damage. I didn't even think for a second that it could actually be used for doing dungeon clears. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be the greatest, you know, because other characters are just going to do a much better job of the exact same thing, especially because Gunslinger kind of suffers from the same thing that I would say Shadowhunter suffers from, or any ranged character for that matter in Trove, where our shots don't actually phase through enemies, and so we're kind of just forced to take on like one enemy at a time. The thing is that the Gunslinger, I mean, all of the ranged attacks technically have this, but Gunslinger is a little bit better, where our shots actually do have a little bit of an AoE around them. And the best way that I can explain it, because the Gunslinger is just, his projectiles in particular are very, very much affected by that slight AoE blast. Him and Fey Trickster, I guess, because they're kind of more single target, like slower, repetitious shots, outside of the fact that Gunslinger normally you build towards attack speed. But consider your attack to be a little pellet, and then there's a bubble around that. So the bubble around that is going to end up doing the AoE blast, so the area of effect, and then there's still going to be your normal projectile. That's why sometimes you'll actually see 2 damage numbers go off on an enemy at the same time, and that's because both of the projectiles, because, you know, technically it's like one projectile within another one, but technically they're both shooting out at the same time. But you can see, I mean, Gunslinger, like, look at this. We're doing like 25, is that 10 mil and then 25 mil when we pop a flask? Yeah. 10 mil normal. Our charge shot did 30 mil right there, and that was not with a flask. The other thing too, I just noticed I'm draining flasks like crazy, so I should actually swap off. I don't need arcane technically speaking, so let's actually swap to unyielding. Again, you know, we've got like best stats in the game kind of thing, so this is super duper ideal. You know, going to be very difficult for you to end up getting yourselves, just because of what it entails in order to do this, but I want to have that unyielding just because, as you can see, that is one of the biggest things about the Gunslinger, and that's something that has always been present. Is Gunslinger's survivability is just like I'm dying. I'm actually dying, and it's crazy to think because I'm so used to playing like these characters that are super duper tanky, you know. Now the other thing too that you gotta consider is I have not once used my ultimate ability because I'm just kind of testing, but if we just pop our ult, everything is literally dead. Like, this is some of the strongest damage in the entire game is on the ultimate ability, and that's why usually you'll end up seeing people use chromatic. The ally I'm using is Puck, which ends up having reduced cooldown, because the thing is that Gunslinger, hilarious. Gunslinger can actually end up using his ult on average between every dungeon, just because the cooldown is like so short technically. The reason why I'm kind of frustrated at this is just because of the fact that Shadowhunter is another character that I always reference how bad it is, because you don't get to use your ult by the time you end up getting to the next dungeon. And then the funny thing is that the ultimate ability of the Gunslinger is actually better than the Shadowhunter, and yet the cooldown is just like so much worse. It's actually ridiculous. So we got like a 30-second cooldown on that ult and a 50-second cooldown on Shadowhunter. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. That's so stupid. Like, could you imagine if it was proper? Like, technically Shadowhunter's ultimate ability does like some of the highest damage in the game, but let's just pop some flasks here so that we can try this out. Our damage, can I even see? 27 mil per shot with our charged attacks. Not to mention the amount of AoE that these shots have and how consistently they can fire as well. Like, it just is crazy, dude. It's absolutely crazy how powerful this class is and what it gets away with compared to some of the other characters. And in a lot of ways, it kind of sets the bar for what all of the other characters have slowly been reworked into. Like, whenever the devs end up reworking a class, usually they're trying to bring it up to the same power as the Gunslinger, and thankfully a lot of the more recent reworks have actually done that. But this just makes me super duper disappointed for Shadowhunter, because Shadowhunter is one of my favorite characters. Anyways, that was our 5 minutes in Geo Topside, so you got to actually see no problem dealing with Geo Surface. As far as movement is concerned, you know, we're not the fastest character. If you're using Unyielding, it obviously gives us a lot more survivability, but generally speaking, you're going to go through your flasks very, very quickly as the Gunslinger, and it's like, it's kind of big yikes, dude. Like, you just, ugh, you know? But let's actually, let me double check and see that everything's set up before I end up going into the delves. All right, so now we're actually in depth 119, and thankfully we just gotta kill a bunch of creatures. The thing is, as we've seen in these 35k videos, if you guys haven't checked out the other ones, normal enemies are gonna be no problem. The biggest issue is almost always going to end up being the boss itself. And the other thing is, with the Gunslinger, you're gonna be doing like super duper amounts of damage, so it doesn't really matter as much. To be a speedy character, that's kind of where the objective lies with other characters, to end up running to the end as quickly as possible. But being a projectile character means that we are going to be I mean, frankly speaking, the projectile characters are some of the most powerful in the entire game. Melee characters just barely ever keep up. But the thing is that the projectiles in Trove are just generally like really finicky and laggy. So it just kind of is like, I don't know. You see that we don't really have the best crowd clearing or anything. However, if I do end up vacuuming all of these guys in, we're going to be doing just fine. I'm not doing the most damage just because I'm not actually, you know, using my ult or anything like that. I'm just kind of trying to focus on killing these enemies just base, I guess. But you can kind of see, like, this is a good example of why I personally don't use Gunslinger as much, because I could be a lot more efficient, of course. Let's actually pop my ult for this one. I could be a lot more efficient, but it's not really like my favorite character in general. I mean, I should just be using my ult a lot more just because of the fact that it's got so much more screen clearing ability. And I mean, look at these enemies already just shredding through my health, which is kind of ridiculous. I guess it's not that big a deal. Most characters are going to end up taking huge heaps of damage from enemies. It's there's only a few of them that can end up surviving as far as just Trove's end game is concerned. But I mean, we're handling the death just fine. You know, we seem to be able to solo it okay. The other thing too that's really nice is the float down effect of the Gunslinger. It does technically mean that you don't really need as much jump, at least for just normal dungeons and stuff. Delves, it's not gonna make that much of a difference, honestly. Let me just waste this one right here. I'm sorry that I'm also walking on foot. I don't have my mount ready or anything like that. I probably should, but I kind of want to give you guys like a full example of like, okay, this is this character's capabilities, because as soon as we end up going to a mount, honestly, we're gonna end up getting to the end of the dungeon at the same rate as any character that ends up using a mount in the delves that also happens to have you know, a knight subclass ability of 30k and up. Which the weird thing is that technically I thought this was a private delve. I mean, it is, but it doesn't seem to be letting me like use any of my mounts. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point of a private delve is that I'm supposed to be able to swap characters or something. I don't know, because the rules keep changing in all the different delves, you know. But anyways, this is the big boy test. Okay, so this is the damage comparatively to all of the other characters that you've seen, and oh my god, look at this. And we've got that survivability of the Gunslinger where you can literally just stay in the air. The point is that you're trying to have your ult go off as often as possible. I'm also just realizing I didn't end up switching to the Lunar Lancer subclass ability, so we're actually not triggering Lunacy, which means that our damage is a little bit less than it would be. But as you can see, I mean, boss has just become an absolute joke for the Gunslinger, dude. Like, no problem whatsoever. Let's see what the buffs were, just because I'm curious. Reduced darkness, same old. Takes additional damage from players, and then some enemies have increased movement speed and damage. Didn't matter because we were floating in the air and we killed it. Probably one of the fastest kills out of the characters. Like, that's the thing. Gunslinger is still some of the highest damage in the game, especially if you're just in a proper group, you know, because what you can actually pair the Gunslinger with very successfully is a Barb's ultimate ability, because it's going to give you a lot more attack speed. That's the other thing to consider, is even though I'm at 36k power rank, technically I'm not using ideal stats because I didn't swap my movement speed off to attack speed, because I can't really do it with my hat, so I didn't really think there was much point. And I mean, good enough example to show you guys that we can still do the damage. Gunslinger can still keep up, so it doesn't really matter that I could have changed this, that, and the other thing. It just means that the potential is even higher just because of the character being able to do so much more damage. But anyways, decide for yourselves. Is it a character you consider maining for the end game? Yes, most definitely you can main this character and you will be a powerhouse, a force to be reckoned with. People use this character on Leviathans as well as like Ice Stage and stuff like that. And just generally speaking, when Shadow Towers was back in the game, I mean, Gunslinger was pretty much the best. But anyways, thanks for watching, gamers. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and have yourselves a fantastic day. Hope you enjoyed the video.